Late yesterday, I made a video talking about how one of my favorite creators, Possibility Maven, has been discussing the ways that we are not able to grieve right now in this country and how that is impacting all of us, all of the tremendous trauma that we are experiencing, all of the grief that is being piled on us, and we don't have the ability to work through that right now, and how that's coming out in all kinds of ways, especially in ways when we interact with and try and work with each other. And in my video, I was talking about how I've not allowed myself to really experience any grief whatsoever. But this past weekend, I was visiting one of my kids on the coast where she is taking summer classes. And it also happens to be where NOAA and the EPA are housed here in Oregon. And I was walking through the campus and it just looks like a ghost town because everybody's been fired. All of these jobs are gone. All of this research has been completely, shut down. And what a huge cost that is, not only to those researchers who are no longer able to do that valuable work, but also all of the, fisheries programs and all of the other people in other industries who rely on the science that those folks are doing, and also all of the communities that rely on the EPA protecting the environment. And I was saying that as I was walking through and it was eerily quiet and the parking lot was empty, that I was just hit with this big wave of grief for all that we've already lost and the way that this regime is stealing from our future, right? It's not just the grief of what we have gone through, up until this point. It's the anticipatory grief for all of the things that are going to befall us in the next coming months and years, especially when it comes to shutting down scientific and medical research and how that is harming us now, it's harming our children, it's harming our future. So all of these layers of grief that we just are not really able to process because we're constantly fighting. We're constantly trying to just keep our heads above water and stay alive, and then we're trying to figure out how to organize and push back against this fascist authoritarian regime. So in my video, I was like, y'all, I don't really know what the solution is because I don't feel that I have time to lay in bed in the fetal position, grieving. I don't feel that I have the ability to take time out of my day to go through that process. But I agree with Christiana, that is such an important thing for us to go through. That is a very important human experience that we're being deprived of by the Trump regime, amongst so many other important human experiences. And so I was asking my viewers, I don't really know what the solution is here. Do y'all have ideas? And there were two folks in my YouTube comments that had really important, profound things to say. And I want to share them here and talk about them real quick. So this commenter said, maybe we should start having candlelight vigils where we take the time to eulogize government programs that have been shut down, rights we've lost, and the lives lost, be they children who died preventable deaths overseas, immigrants who've died in concentration camps, community members who've been snatched up, and eventually those who died locally from loss of food assistance, healthcare, and despair. It's activism that helps us grieve. So thank you to this commenter, because I think that that is a really, really good idea, being able to express our grief publicly. One of the things I said in my original video was in the Victorian ages, you had to wear black or a black armband. Grieving was something you did very publicly. Everybody knew that you were going through the grief process. And now in American society, we're lucky if we get 2 bereavement days and then you're expected to be highly functional and back at it, right? You got to keep giving your energy to the machine. And we don't create public spaces for people to grieve. We don't really like to talk about death, and we don't really like to talk about grief that much in American society. It makes us very uncomfortable, but it's so necessary. And so many people grieve in private or feel that their ability to grieve is stifled. And this idea, I think, is so powerful. I think it aligns somewhat with the concept of a die-in, but then expands it. A die-in is a protest where they implemented them a lot during the AIDS protests, the ACT UP protests in the 80s. Where it was a visual demonstration of how many people would die because of loss of healthcare, loss of medication, life-sustaining medication. And folks would make cardboard tombstones, and they would all lay out in a park, and it would be a really clear visual demonstration of the anticipatory grief, right? Of the people who would be dying if these cuts went through, if these programs were dismantled. And we've also seen vigils, especially outside of ICE facilities, where clergy are coming in and having a prayer vigil or a silent prayer walk as a form of protest and a way to acknowledge the victims of ICE, the folks who are being abducted by them and disappeared into these for-profit detention concentration systems. But I just loved this comment from this person because I think it combines so perfectly the fact that we need spaces, not only physical spaces, but like time in our schedule to grieve. And we feel, I don't know, I feel, and I know some of my friends feel this way, that we don't have the ability to carve out that time because that would be time taken away from protesting or time taken away from activism. But like, this is a way that would combine those so that our grief could be very public, could be a form of activism. Our grief can be something that we are able to process not quietly in our bedrooms in the fetal position, but publicly in community with other people. And that grief can be a visual demonstration to the entire society of what we are losing and how much harm is being done by this regime. I love this idea as a form of demonstration, as a form of protest, as a way to build community and to give people a space to grieve. The second comment that I saw today that I thought was really excellent was this one: a period of public mourning could look like a general strike. In Trickster's Queen, which is a book that I have not read, they organize a 3-day strike to mourn losses along the way. It gives them time for reflection and makes a strong show of support for change. I think this is also a really great idea. In permaculture, we say stacking functions, which is where you try to layer in as many benefits into any element in your system, into any action that you undertake. You try to get as many yields or create as many purposes as possible so that you can maximize your efficiency. So if you're doing one event, it should serve multiple purposes, right? Like the protests like No King's Day, it was to try to work to erode those pillars of support under Trump to show there is a huge, massive, very visual opposition against what Trump is doing, to communicate that a day of accountability is coming. But also it was about bringing people on board, right? It was about bringing people into the movement, letting people know they're not alone and hey, you can come join the party, right? It's about bringing folks in and helping them get plugged in to active resistance and then level up their skills and their participation. And I've been saying since like January or February that we need a general strike, that is something that we know could be highly effective, but that is a huge lift. That is something that requires a lot of planning, a tremendous amount of organization, and it requires really high levels of participation for as long as it takes. Tad Stormer, who's a historian and an expert on authoritarianism, made a video a couple days ago where he was talking about the 3.5% rule and how people don't understand it. And I was like, yes, this is what I've been saying. Folks think that the 3.5% rule means if 3.5% of the population shows up to a protest on a given day, that like, well, bam, the authoritarians are just like done. They're cooked. They're going to step down. It's all over for them. That's not what it means. It means historically, right? It is descriptive, not proscriptive. Historically, when 3.5% of the population is engaged in sustained, prolonged resistance, that authoritarian regime is not going to last, right? That does not mean that if that many people show up to a one-day event, it's all over. It means we need that many people participating in sustained resistance, doing things like boycotts, doing things like using whatever power and influence you have to erode the pillars of support under Trump. It means engaging in general strikes. We know that general strikes are highly, highly effective. Labor stoppage is a way that we can leverage our power as ordinary working class people. Yes, we have power at the ballot box. We have our collective voting power at the ballot box because we lived until recently in a democratic society. We are now looking at a failing democratic state, but that doesn't mean that we don't still have power at the ballot box. And it's crucial that we have huge get out the vote movements. But it's not just a democratic society, it's also a capitalist society, it's also an oligarchy. So the way that we, the working class, have power is by withdrawing our labor from the system. It can't keep going if we stop working. Unfortunately, us giving our labor and purchasing things from the system, we become pillars of support under the oligarchs by doing that. So the way we exercise our power is we stop working. Everybody, we have a sustained general strike. And I really appreciated the way that this person was like, let's stack functions. A general strike can be combined with national days of mourning. It's like that song, we're in the middle of a hostile government takeover. I want to talk about it, but I'll be late for work. We all still have to go to work, and a number of us are having to work much harder because our paychecks are not going nearly as far as they did before we had Trump. And also we're trying to do all of the organizing and active resistance. So I really love that idea of folding our planning for a general strike to include space for mourning. So thanks, y'all, for being willing to have this ongoing conversation and share your ideas. I really, really appreciate each and every one of you. And it is through our community, through our connections, through our shared ideas and support that we're going to get through this.